Welcome to BAM It with John, Michael, and Mari, covering all things business, accounting, marketing, management, and IT. The place where businesses and entrepreneurs find the forest through the trees.
Hello and welcome to BAM It. I am John Michael Cletus with Peridot Consulting, and as always, I'm here with Mari Peterson with the Marketing Outpost. In today's episode, we are going to be interviewing a good friend of ours, Dr. Johanna Lopez. She's a dentist and had just purchased a new dental practice, so we're going to talk about all the experience, trials, and tribulations of that, and then also just talk to Johanna here about what she does in her industry. And before we get into that, and I'll let Johanna kind of come into the interesting facts, because before we started recording, I started pulling up some fun, interesting facts, and I wanted to do it in real time with Johanna. Okay, so the first one, the average American spends 38 and a half total days brushing their teeth over their lifetime.
That sounds low.
Well, 24 hours a day.
Probably true.
Yeah.
So that percentage again?
Well, it's not percentage, 38 and a half total days brushing their teeth. People who drink 3 or more glasses of soda each day have a 62% more tooth decay.
Yes.
Yes, she agrees. The doctor agrees.
Thank goodness I drink no sodas.
Do 4 out of 5 dentists actually recommend Colgate? No, we don't have to get into a brand. But that was a joke. You don't have to answer
not.
that. That was a joke. We won't. Don't answer that. It's just that the commercials always say 4 out of 5 dentists recommend you, I don't know, chew gum. Okay, moving on. I did that. Tooth enamel is the hardest substance in the human body.
True.
True. If you don't floss, you missed cleaning 40% of your tooth surfaces.
Probably true.
Do you recommend everybody floss?
Yes.
Yes.
Or use a water pick or an air flosser.
Okay, and if you don't floss, it's bad?
Yeah, you can get decay between your teeth or inflamed gum tissue and have a high risk of decay.
Okay. All right, well, those are my interesting facts.
Okay, I have an interesting fact. Out of the almost 200,000 dentists working in dentistry, as of 2018, only 32% are female. So you represent a small percentage. And also, I would gather that as an owner, being female is also a small percentage. And go ahead and say it.
Oh, yes. Dentists, as new business owners, they have a failure rate of less than 0.5%.
So in other words, that is a really good industry to be in, a good business to be in.
Yes.
Yes.
And in the U.S., so on top of you being in a pretty good type of practice and that you represent a small percentage being female, what else, other small percentage I bet you represent?
Oh, probably Latino women or minorities that own a dental practice.
So you are killing it everywhere. Great practice, and you are doing something that a lot of other people are not, and hopefully that'll be a good example for other women.
Oh, yes.
Okay, so let's start off with, we've heard a little bit from Johanna so far, but we haven't heard about you. So go ahead and give us a little bit of background and maybe where you're from and how you got here and how you got into dental practice.
Oh, gosh. Okay. So my parents are from El Salvador, which is a Central American country. I think it might be the smallest Latin American country out there. But they moved to New York, and that's where I was born. And we lived in Queens up until I was 18 years old and went to high school there. And so then my junior year of high school is when we moved down to North Carolina. My dad worked in textiles, and they closed the factory where he worked, and most of the jobs were sent overseas. So he lost his position there. And his friend had moved to Raleigh and told him it was great, got a job pretty easily. So we did it. We moved, and it was good. So before we moved, I had applied to colleges and decided to go to NC State, and I majored in nutrition there. And then probably my second year of NC State, I decided to do a summer enrichment preparation program at UNC. So I was a little bit of a traitor there. But at UNC, in this summer enrichment preparation program, which was for minorities, they took us around to all the specialty schools at UNC. So we went to optometry, nursing, medical doctors, dentist, the dental school, pharmacy. And when we went to the dental school, they let us do a little cavity preparation on a little model tooth. And I was like, oh, I like this. And so I went back to my family dentist at the time, and I shadowed them, and I decided that this was something I wanted to pursue. So then quickly after that, I took the DAT, did well enough to be competitive at applying. And since I had done that summer preparation program, I had met a lot of the faculty at the dental school. So that was great for networking. Applied and got in.
Wow. And this is at Carolina Dental School?
Yeah, UNC Chapel Hill, which has now been renamed to the Adams School of Dentistry because of a big donation.
Wow. I'm guessing from an Adams.
Yes, I'm guessing from Adams too. Yeah. And so then after that, I met my husband in dental school. We were in the same class, but we didn't start dating until our third year of school. And he's from Shelby, North Carolina, which is only about maybe an hour and 15 minutes from here. And he loved the mountains, and I was a city girl, and so I wanted to stay in Raleigh, but he wanted to come here. So I was like, okay, we'll give it a try. And I decided to do the residency program at Mayhack here, which is it's just a year long. You get extra training in what you learned in dental school. And in dental school, you're supposed to get all these things done. So a certain number of fillings, crowns, extractions, root canals before you graduate. And so with root canals, we only had to do 6. With extractions, I think it was less than 100. And so I wanted more experience with that. So that was a great program to get into. And then I worked as an associate for 4 years. And now I am a business owner.
And we'd like to say congratulations, because that is literally, a month ago?
Yes, September 13th, so less than a month ago.
Less than a month ago, she has officially become a business owner of an existing dental practice, can we say in Hendersonville?
Yes, in Hendersonville.
And what is it called?
Laurel Park Dentistry.
And it's a nice practice. She has existing clients, and she has existing staff also that stayed.
Yep.
And I believe the practice you bought it from, those owners moved out of state. Isn't that correct?
Yes, they moved back home to Kentucky.
Okay. So let's kind of segue now into your experience.
Yeah, so you just stepping away from the dentist role, but just buying a business role. So what is it? How was the process? What was, how did it start? And then what is it you didn't know and you had to kind of figure out from the beginning? And what did you do? Just buying a business. It can be intimidating.
Yeah, so Alex and I, and he's an associate as well where he's currently working. And so we're just talking about our future and thinking about, retirement, which is a big part of it, but also our roles as dentists. And so when you're an associate, you don't have as much autonomy as far as the things, procedures that you want to focus on, things that you want to order, how you want your office to run. And so that was a big deciding factor for us, being more autonomous, being able to make the final decisions, being able to work, as much as we want or as little as we want or together, and just getting ready to maybe, be okay when we get out of the game.
Exactly. Thinking about your future.
Yes.
So when this opportunity came about, and I guess, how did it come about? You just heard that a dental practice was for sale?
Yes. And so we had a mutual friend with the previous owners, and it wasn't up for sale yet, but our mutual friend let us know that they were thinking about selling. And so he made the connection, and we talked to them, and we realized that we practiced in a similar manner, and we were pleased with the way that they ran their practice. And so we thought it'd be a good transition between them and me for the beginning. And then eventually, as it grew, bring on another dentist, or, hopefully grow and add more hygienists and more assistants and be able to service more patients.
So was the process as simple as you met these other dentists willing to sell, and then you presumably gave them money and you were in the next week, or was there a little bit more in between when you're buying a business?
It seemed like it was going to be that way, but it was more complicated, gets very detailed, and negotiating isn't very fun. But I have a good team. John Michael helped me out, and my lawyers were great as well. And so just a lot of back and forth. But for the majority, I felt like the big picture items were where they needed to be. And so it wasn't as bad fine-tuning.
Maybe it took a little bit longer than you expected.
Yes. And the thing that held me up the most was my life insurance, which I didn't know this, but you need to, in order to get a loan from the bank, it needs to be insured. And the way to insure it is to have life insurance and name the bank your beneficiary, which from start to finish, getting life insurance took about 2 months, where I was thinking that it might have taken 1 month. And so we had to push things back a little bit.
That would surprise me too. It's not something you would expect. So that happens to a lot of new business owners when they buy a practice, is unexpected things come up, even if you're like, building a new business from scratch, like a restaurant or something, there's always something that comes up. So now that you've been through that part of the challenge, are you excited about the future and what you might be doing? Do you have any specific goals?
Oh, yeah. I'm very excited. So far, it's been going well. And with John Michael, we've, of course, made a financial plan to keep the practice up and running and to eventually maybe expand investments into the building that the practice is currently in. So that's my current goal.
And I think that's where there's a good crossroads here that you've talked about, where John Michael has helped you as Peridot Consulting to help you develop not only just a business plan, but maybe a financial plan, so that you can afford the different things that you need to be able to do, right, in the practice.
Yes, there's so many expenses in a dental practice that I knew were going to be there, but when it comes down to paying for everything, I didn't realize how expensive they would be and how much overhead they would be. So from the rent to the payroll to
the landscaper,
the landscaping, yes, everything plays a big role into it. But I'm happy to do it because it'll keep the practice up and running, keep my staff members employed, and keep patients walking through the door.
Well, it's in your case, you are and have been a dentist, and you were an associate for a while where you forgive me for dumbing this down a little bit, but you basically just showed up and you did your service and then you left. Going from that paradigm to owning a business. And owning a business is running the business, having staff, having employees, having the overhead, paying the bills, all those things. And I guess, we're talking to you about that, just the unknowns of when you got into it and the back to when you were purchasing the practice, it should have been just as simple. You knew the sellers, they knew you guys agreed on a price. It should have been done in a week, but we'll call it the due diligence period lasted, 3 months? Maybe?
Yes. And so from start to finish, I think we started in June, and then we didn't get details finalized until maybe the end of July, beginning of August. And then we set a purchase date for the end of August, but it didn't end up happening until mid-September. So it is a long process, but it is an important one too. You have to make sure you know what you're buying, what the previous owner has done, what kind of equipment they have, what kind of dues they have, how they've been running the practice as far as what services they provide, how much income they get from that, what their expenditures are. That way you know what to expect once you get in there, you know where to start from, and then make a better plan as far as where you want to be, in a year, 2 years, 5 years.
Would you say any of that was a part of your formal education?
No, nothing.
You kind of went through a real quick business school, didn't you?
I learned on the fly. Yes, I learned so many things. And you're right. I just went in to work when I was an associate, 8 to 5, Monday through Thursday, just worried about patient care. And that was it. Managerial things really didn't come into my brain. And I was the only dentist at the practice that I was an associate in. And so I did have a lot of experience with staff and HR, but most of that was delegated to the office manager. You know, I just kind of put in my 2 cents and she did it.
Right.
Okay, so we're going to take a quick break here, and then when we come back, we're going to get into some more of some things you learned during that process.
This podcast is brought to you by Peridot Consulting and Marketing Outpost. Peridot Consulting offers a new paradigm in accounting services. We work with individuals and businesses toward prosperity and financial happiness. Please visit www.peridotconsultinginc.com for more information. Marketing Outpost provides strategies to solve problems and strategies to grow your business. Please visit www.marketingoutpost.com for more information.
So we're back from the break here, and I just want to get into a little bit back on the due diligence, that whole process, because it's such an important process, I think, when you're buying a business.
So I think a lot of business owners or soon-to-be business owners tend to just jump right in, and they'll overlook a lot of very important steps and also maybe not hire the right professionals and help. And I think you did it the right way. So would you tell us a little bit more about kind of like who helped you out and how did that help you think?
Yes, so I had a great accountant, John Michael, help me out with the majority of the due diligence. And then I also had a good team of lawyers at Van Winkle help me as well with the due diligence, well, more with the purchase agreement contract and the lease. But when we went in there, we wanted to make sure all the numbers that the owners were giving us were correct. And so I think we had maybe like 4 pages of items that we wanted to get from the owners, and we didn't get all of those 4 pages, but a lot of reports from the Dentrix system.
Instead of just accepting what was given to you, you needed to verify those numbers.
We need to verify, and we're entitled to do that because we are purchasing the information that they're giving us.
Yeah.
So that was a big part of it.
Yeah, and that's a process. I mean, you're getting, a couple years of bank statements, you're getting financials, you're getting internal software documents, and like Dr. Johanna just said, it's 4 pages of requests, staff histories, the whole 9. To reiterate what she said, that it is important because you are buying this practice, and if they disclose that their financials are one way, you got to confirm that.
I have seen that in the past, having worked for lawyers years ago, is that don't accept what is given to you because you're making a pretty big investment. And so it's very important that contract is right and the information is right and it's based on correct information. And if not, then what are you going to do about it a year from now, if it was wrong? So I think you did a smart thing there, making sure you had a good team.
Yeah, so now you're off and running, you own your own practice. You kind of alluded to it earlier about how just, some of the challenges or things that you're realizing now that you're in there is just some of the added overhead. How are you finding that balance from putting on your business owner hat to your, a dentist hat? And they call it working on your business versus working in your business. How are you finding that balance at the very beginning stages?
So it's a lot more time investment, which I knew would be happening, but I didn't realize how much more time. So instead of showing up 15 minutes before patients walk in the door, sometimes I'm there 30 or 45 or an hour beforehand just to catch up on managerial things. I try to get all the dental and patient management portion of my job done while I'm there 8 to 5. And then I usually stay until about 6 and go over things with the manager, the front desk, staff member, see how things went today, what our goals were for the beginning of the day, what they ended up being, what patients have to be called back, what we didn't get to do that day that we might have to leave for the next day. So it's a lot more. I go home and I drive home and I think about all these things. And sometimes I don't even remember my drive home because there's so many things swimming in my head. So it's a lot. And sometimes I get asked in the middle of a procedure to make a decision, and that's something I'm not used to, because when I'm in the mouth, I'm in the mouth, and that patient is the most important thing in the world. And so kind of stopping and realizing that I do have to answer this question makes me switch gears a little bit.
And then you're doing 7 p.m. phone calls with your accountant to go over checks
yes.
and bookkeeping. And so it is a never-ending thing sometimes.
Yes,
I can imagine.
but it's worth it. You get ahead of the curve, and then you're good for that month, and you start fresh the next month, which is nice. And you get to see how far you've come in that one period of time, which is great too.
Yeah, that's the one of many good things about accounting, is that at least is a metric of performance.
Mm-hmm. So. And I think that what you're introducing and talking about is something that all entrepreneurs and business owners struggle with, is time management, delegating. I don't know if there is such a thing as work-life balance. It's more like work-life control and not letting it, go over too many boundaries. So I think you're kind of starting to dip your toes into that a little bit. What advice would you give to somebody else if they said, hey, I see what you've done, it looked great and easy, I'm thinking about buying a practice and getting started? What would you tell that person?
Well, I love my career, and so I'd tell anybody to become a dentist. I don't care who you are. It's such a great career path to take, and you get to help so many people. But as far as business ownership, you have to know what you're getting into before you do it, because you can make a great career out of being a dentist by being an associate or working in public health and not having as much of, I guess, the time commitment as it does take to be a practice owner. But at the end of the day, I go home now and I'm very proud, which is...
And when you walk into your practice, you're like, this is mine.
Yes. You feel good about it, and you think you're going to do great things, and you end up doing them at the end of the day. And so it's very nice. So I would tell people to take that leap of faith, but not to take it until they've done all their due diligence, of course, just to make sure you're getting into something that won't be quite as hard, and you won't have as many headaches, and you won't have to revisit things. You can kind of just hit the ground running.
Yeah, and you have a good team. I mean, obviously you've got an accountant, you've got a law firm behind you, you've got your own banker now, and not only you've got those professionals, you've got your team within you, you've got an office manager, you've got an assistant, and obviously the dental hygienist and everybody. So now you're like a spoke in the middle of this team, and it's probably a good thing, and it's a good feeling, and we're all on your side. It's all a good thing.
Could you imagine if you had done all this without the lawyer and the accountant?
Gosh, I would have been so lost. Yeah, and
there are people that do that.
It's just a hard thing to figure out, and to make sure you're doing it the right way, and to make sure that you don't have to pick up any kind of loose ends at the end of your business deal, which I feel like I didn't have to do any of that at all. Like, the previous owner texted me the week after, and she asked me if everything was okay, and I said yes, and it was great.
That's good. So we're very excited about your future, and we can't wait to hear more. I'm sure we'll be checking in with you, and I know John Michael will on a regular basis, right?
Yes.
On Wednesday evenings at 7 p.m.
Well, it's, we both have to work around her schedule sometimes, because during the day she's not going to be talking to her accountant at 10 a.m., that's for sure. So let's just transition a little bit and just talk about the industry as a whole. So what would you say is a stereotype of your industry that you think people think of dentists?
That it's gross. You're in the mouth and looking at teeth, and I don't know, there's some weird statistics that dentists have a high suicide rate, little things like that. Yeah, in dental school, I guess that's what they told us. And so there was a lot of mental health counseling in the beginning of it. Probably halitosis.
It's a thing. I'm going to now cover my mouth every time I talk. So versus that stereotype, what is sort of your reality like that counters that stereotype?
Yeah, it's great. It's a hard job to do. You have to be in the mindset that you're going in there, and sometimes when you're working on a tooth, you're just thinking about the tooth, but it's attached to a whole person. And so a lot of it is psychology and talking people through it, because there is a lot of anxiety around dental treatment. So that was a very important thing that I didn't learn in school until I started treating patients on a regular basis. Little things like that, the tooth is why you're there, but there's this whole larger component to it. So it's very multifactorial.
And what do you think is the best part about what you do?
Just, having somebody smile at the end. Well, first everybody comes in, they say they don't want to be there. And so I'm like, oh, great. I'll be with you for the next hour. Yeah. But I guess them leaving the appointment being like, oh, that wasn't so bad.
Yeah.
That wasn't as bad as I thought. Or somebody saying, thank you. Like, that's great. That doesn't happen a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Well, make sure you thank your dentist out there, guys. And what is it, something, I don't want to say the worst part about your job, but what's something that
maybe is a challenge?
Is a challenge.
Yeah, I guess you never really know what you're going to get into. You can look at the x-ray all you want, look at the tooth all you want. And I was working on a patient this week, and we thought it was going to be a simple crown prep, but, the decay got too deep into the tooth. And so it ended up needing a root canal. We had to send them off to the endodontist. So it was just something that wasn't expected. So that's probably the hardest, telling your patient, this is what we hope to gain, but if we don't do that, kind of making up for it. And so that's a little difficult.
So do you see your industry changing much, or any trends in the industry over the next 5-10 years?
Oh, yes. I think corporate dentistry is becoming a thing, and one person owning multiple offices is more of a trend now. And so I was talking to my husband about this, and I told him, we may be one of the last few dentists that can own a dental practice and succeed without, having to constantly think about growth or being bought by another big practice. And so in North Carolina, the dental society has done a great job at trying to keep that at bay, but I think it's coming to our state pretty soon. I think there's...
What do you mean by corporate dentistry in this Aspen Dental? What is that?
Yes, and so it's one dentist or one group of dentists that own multiple practices, and they have associate dentists that work for them but don't necessarily get to become business owners. So a little bit more turnaround, a little bit faster treatment for patients, maybe not as personable.
Got it.
Just
kind of more like
a menu of services.
Style.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I can see that happening.
So what about technology? How I know that when I was getting my teeth cleaned as a boy versus the dentist now, technology is completely different. How has technology affected what you do, and how, what's that going to do?
Oh gosh, yeah, it's like a shiny new toy, all these cool, when you go to dental conferences, there's always a showroom, and there's always the newest, fanciest thing out there. And so milling crowns in-house has become a big thing for a lot of dentists, having a cone beam, like a 3D x-ray.
Oh yeah, I get all kinds of photos now.
Yeah.
So when these new fancy gadgets, I guess, for lack of a better term, they're coming around almost on an annual basis or all the time, I guess you have to say, if you decide, oh, that's cool, I want to start doing that, do you have to get certified or trained?
There is, usually when you buy the product, there is some training attached to it. And they also have, I guess, kind of a customer service line if you have any questions that goes along, maybe like a monthly payment. And so you do get trained for these things, and it's an added service that you're bringing to your patients. But at the same time, these gadgets tend to be expensive. And so sometimes you're bringing that cost on to your patient. And so a lot of dentists are hesitant to do it.
Yeah,
or be the first one to do it.
Or be the first ones to do it, yeah. But, I mean, it's on a need basis. And I feel like we have a lot of labs that do it, or you can send them a patient to an imaging center to get the same service done. So it's not like you're necessarily behind the curve if you don't have these new gadgets.
Well, That is very cool.
I like technology, but I agree it's expensive. I think you have to update and upgrade, and there's all of that going on. So
Yeah, and you never want to be the first one to do that, that gadget, because is it added plus or is it just a gadget?
Yeah.
I mean, I can imagine in dentistry when it's just
But what the patient wants is nice patient care.
Yeah.
And you know what? Sometimes they're not as concerned about, how expensive was that, because, you're just adding on to their cost.
Yeah.
My dentist I really like, but I came out of there, they gave me a little package with the toothbrush, the toothpaste. There's not much in there, but it was probably in this really thick, expensive cardstock bag that I know as a marketing professional was quite expensive. And I was thinking, wow, they give one of these to everybody and it's all it has is this in it. So my question was, how much of my bill was that, So I think you're being wise about, picking and choosing those kind of things.
Yeah.
No, I mean, we really want to thank you for taking the time, your busy schedule, new business owner, a dentist. I mean, I know you're extremely busy, and just coming here and taking the time and to share your insights from not only buying the business, but also just your insights into the industry. We are very appreciative of that, and thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys.
So before we close out of here, would you please provide your website and where you're located, how people can reach you? Is it a phone number or an email?
Yes, we are in Laurel Park, which is a little subdivision west of Hendersonville. And the website is laurelparkfdc.com. And our phone number is 828-693-5190.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. And we want to say thank you to the listeners for joining us today. Please be sure to review this episode. For more information on who we are or this podcast, please visit www.bammit.com. That's BAMM-IT.com. And our next episode, we're going to be talking about...
We're going to do a live podcast that will be live streamed via Facebook, but then it won't be live on podcasting, is it?
No, it won't be podcast live. It'll be live taped, so it's going to be a lot of edits and stuff that aren't going to be happening.
Right. So we're interviewing 2 other business owners, one in the restaurant and club business, and the other one in the music business.
Yep. And that'll be fun.
So thank you.
Thank you.
The hosts and the guests of this podcast make no warranty, guarantee, or representation as to the accuracy or sufficiency of the information featured in this podcast. The information, opinions, and recommendations presented in this podcast are for general information only, and any reliance on the information provided in this podcast is done at your own risk. This podcast should not be considered professional advice and is for entertainment purposes. It is not guaranteed that you will find this as entertaining as the hosts find themselves.